that we do
Yeah.
that is outside of God, it becomes meaningless at some point. There's some emptiness that it comes with. So I feel that God is the center of my life. That's where I connect to. So when I lose my way, and I always do, that's where I go back and I connect to. And He's something that just grounds me.
Welcome back to the Conversation podcast. We are loving the Your Story series. We've had some amazing conversations, and today we are chatting with Sive Vaaltein. She is involved at Living Hope. She is involved at our church on our AV team, and she has an amazing story to tell of brokenness, of healing, of God's provision, how He's guided her. And it's a story full of expression, full of really important detail in terms of understanding where she's come from and where she's going. And just such an anointing on her life to do what she does. And I know, that her story is going to touch you in a big way. So, let's welcome Sive. Welcome to the Conversation podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tristan. I'm so excited. I told all my family I'm coming through.
Oh, awesome.
So they're definitely going to be tuning in sometime and listen to this.
So we have some fans.
Absolutely.
Hey? A fan base that's busy building.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you do.
That's awesome. Well, we are so excited to have you on this podcast. As you would know, we're talking about stories and just getting to know people in our church. And I think about a month ago when you were on stage, I said, I think we need to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And here we are, doing one today. So thank you for being brave and just coming in today and joining us. Maybe just for people to get to know you a little bit. One of your interests is keeping fit. Yeah. I know that. I see you at gym. Tell us about that, because you lift things that I could never do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, let me tell you about it. Well, it started after I graduated for my bachelor's degree. I didn't exactly have anything to do.
Yeah.
But I've always been so fascinated with people's legs, especially rugby players. So you see those legs that are well defined and everything. I've always thought, oh my gosh, I'd love to have one of those. So when I had more time after graduation, I decided to join the gym. I started working out, and I've just been hooked ever since.
Wow.
So so you'll find me at the gym Mondays to Fridays, and if there's nothing going on over the weekend, I might pop by too.
No.
Yeah.
You know, being active and keeping fit does have that way of actually making you crave it.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more your body actually says, Tristan, go to the gym, or just ride a bike or do something.
Yeah.
I want to, get my heart rate up.
Absolutely.
And it's got so many good benefits, doesn't it?
Of course. I think for me, I'm a social worker. I'm a social worker by profession. So I take on a lot of heavy stories, heavy in terms of emotional stories. So I don't always have somebody that I can talk to. I do have a supervisor that will sit down with me, that will help me debrief and all that.
Sure.
But most of the time I'm on my own. So the gym has been a very great space where I can go and release that de-roll and just become myself. So it's just really, really played an important role in my life. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think, just over the next half an hour, 45 minutes, we're going to get to know you well.
Absolutely.
A little bit better.
Yes, you will.
And let's jump into it.
Okay.
Tell us a bit about your background, how you grew up, where you grew up, family life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, man. My childhood was not as good as I would like it to be. So I grew up in Queenstown.
Nice.
And I was raised
Cape.
Yeah.
Okay. High five.
Yeah. Wi-Fi that one too.
Gobeka. That's where I'm from.
Wow. I'm surprised you can say that.
I think I said it right.
Yeah. Sounded so like Xhosa. So I was raised there by my grandmother. So when I was young, the first person that I was aware of that was in my life, that was a carer for me, was my grandmother. And I had a pretty good, decent life for, I think, maybe first 5 years of my life. And then I had this conversation at school with one of my peers, and she was asking me, Sive, you're always talking about your grandmother. Where's your mom? Where's your dad? And I was like, what is that?
Wow.
I thought everybody had my kind of arrangement. They were all raised by their grandmothers. So I came back home and I asked my grandmother, do I have a mom? Do I have a dad? What's going on? And then she said, yes, Sive, you did have a mom, but your mom passed away the year after you were born.
Wow.
And you do have a dad. Your dad is in King Williamstown. My dad was my grandmother was actually my dad's mother. So apparently after my mom passed away, my dad sent me to go and live with his mother. And so that was my story when I was young. And then I think 2 years later from there, my dad came back. He had lost his job, and then he came back and he had myself and my sister, who was 3 years older than me. So we stayed together, and my paternal grandmother. But things didn't go very well, you know. I think when I look at the situation now from a social worker's eyes, I'm able to see more to the story than when I was involved in the story. Because when he came back, I sensed that because he had lost his job, my dad didn't, and now he had these 2 kids that he had never been involved in. And now he had that responsibilities. He didn't know how to take that on. So then he became physically abusive towards myself and my sister. The way he disciplined us was just not appropriate. Every child that I knew experienced corporal punishment at some point in their lives. But the way that my dad went about doing it, it was just on another level. I remember, if I can tell you one of the stories that used to make me cry every time I told it. But, you know, I think I'm getting used to it. So hopefully I don't cry right now. But, you know, there's this one time where my father used to sell cigarettes, loose cigarettes. And so they were 50 cents. I must have been 6 years old, actually, when he came back and to live with us. So now these cigarettes are 50 cents. I don't know how to calculate properly. I'm 6 years old.
Sure.
So now
Fair
I was
enough.
left alone in the house, and this guy comes and buys with 2 rands. I'm thinking this is a lot of money. So I got to give him a lot. So I give him 6 instead of, I give him 6, instead of 4.
Yeah.
And then this guy leaves. I'm sure he thought this was his day. That day, I almost died. Because when my dad came back, calculated his cigarettes, he just thought that I stole the money. And he bit me so bad, you know, like taking me, throwing me here and there. I crawled out of the house when I was leaving his space. And, you know, that touched me so much. Like every time I go back into that space, I just, it's not a very good space. So that was my life experience. So that was something that happened. Being beaten was something that happened to me every day. So my life as a child was more about survival than anything else. And so luckily one day, one of my late brothers, who's a stepbrother to me, my dad's son, decided, you know what, I'm going to take you to your maternal side of the family. I didn't even know them, by the way. So I was like, okay, I'm happy, anything but here.
Yeah.
You know?
Take me.
Yeah. So then my sister and him, we left. We came this side to my maternal side of the family. And that's when a shift began in my life. Because this woman didn't know me as far as I was concerned, because I was raised by the other one. And you know, she showed me so much love. She was always patient with me. She believed in me, and she helped me dream, because when I was young, my life was more about surviving and living from this day to the next day. Then when I went to live with my maternal grandmother showed me love. She didn't have a lot. You know, she was also poor, but she encouraged me to dream. And, you know, I knew that was possible because I was in the space where I can be anything that I wanted to be. And the interesting thing that happened in that very same year of moving into, with my grandmother, in the other side of the family, was that my cousin and my other stepsister from my mother's side of the family that I didn't know were doing grade 12 at that period of their lives. And they both passed with their matric. my stepsister, passed with what they called at the time school leaving. You might know this. and then my brother passed with an exemption. So the family was happy that they both passed.
Yeah.
But the way they were celebrating my cousin brother, it was different from the way they celebrated my stepsister, because my cousin brother did it with an exemption. It was exceptional. So it was something that not just my family was proud of, it was something that my community was proud of as well. So I was like, and another thing for me was that these people I knew and their names were on a paper. I didn't know that was possible for me, that somebody I knew would be on a newspaper. So I kept on looking at this and asking him to help me find their names. And my cousin brother asked me, "Why are you so fascinated with this?" I was like, "No, man, I'm actually trying to figure out how can I have my name on the paper as well? If you can do it, then it means I can do it too." So that was the first time I set my goal, the first goal in my life. Because he said, you have to pass well throughout the years, and you have to work so hard in your studies, and you need to pass with an exemption. And that's how they put your name on the paper, and that's how you get to be celebrated. So then that's when I decided I'm going to get the same thing. Because you know what they do in the village when you pass grade 12?
No.
They slaughter a chicken for you.
Oh.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Wow.
I hope that didn't sound like violent.
No,
that's a big deal.
No.
So
Yeah.
So that was the first time I was like, okay, that was the first goal. And then I just kind of, life went on. I continued to focus on my studies. It wasn't easy. Because my grandmother, like I was saying, was also poor. So we were depending on her grant. And then eventually I got to grade 12. And now there was this thing of, okay, what do I need to do? How do I do it in terms of after matriculating?
So just before we go into more of your studies, at this point, have you cut off relationship with your dad?
Yeah.
Or, okay, so there's no communication there.
Yeah. So I for the first 2-3 years, I was always concerned about him possibly showing up and claiming us and, those kinds of things. But my dad never did. So that was good. That was a blessing as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I never said, I think, when I was talking about this story is that when I was living with my dad, I knew I hated him. And that's a very strong word to say. But I would just see him standing there. I hated him. Like, I hated what he stood for. I hated everything about him because he never showed me any love, any kindness.
Yeah.
So I didn't like him at all. And then I think 2-3 years of living with my maternal grandmother, I would reflect with my sister about, how I feel about him and what I think. And I thought that I had come to a point where I had forgiven him because he wasn't a part of my life and my life was going good. So I thought, I'm fine with him. I've forgiven him.
Yeah.
But we hadn't been in touch, and cell phones were not a big thing at the time.
Sure.
I didn't have a phone. My grandmother didn't have a phone. But I did try and reconnect because my late brother, who took us to my maternal side of the family, passed away when I was still in college. And so I went and I buried him. And then my maternal grandmother also passed away. And then I went and I buried her.
Sure.
So in these, events where we go and do and enjoy the funeral, we would see my dad. So it would be, hello, how you doing? Okay,
like
good to see you.
More than a
kind of
father.
vibe. We didn't really connect. And I think there's another thing with a lot of Black parents. Sometimes things go wrong. You do things maybe because you're in a dark space in your life, maybe as a parent, and then maybe you come out of that. The challenge is people don't sit down with their kids and say, "Hey, I was in a dark place in my life at that point. When I look at that side or that phase of my life, I realize the many mistakes that I've made, and I'm sorry." They don't do that. They don't do that. It's like, just figure it out yourself, kind of vibe.
Like a pride thing or something.
I think so too, because it was difficult for me to start a conversation with my father and say, "Hey, we've got problems that we never actually dealt with. Can we go back to that?" No, it was never
Okay.
we never went back to that at all.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to have a healthy boundary because of what happened.
Yeah.
And, you need to love yourself enough to say, no, I deserve better.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful to hear of what happened with your one grandmother and so on, and how God used that relationship to help restore,
Absolutely. It's quite interesting, really.
Yeah.
Because when I think about it, I do think of my story, as much as I've just told you about these traumas that I've told you about, I do think of it as sort of an happy ever after kind of story. And I know that that's not the situation for a lot of kids who only have that kind of life, So I do want to thank God for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I don't want to lie to you. At the time, I didn't know the Lord.
Yeah,
There's a story that I just want to also just let you know. Because when I was there, we were poor.
Yeah.
Tristan? So sometimes it would be difficult for my grandmother to feed us for the whole month. So you know what I used to do? My sister and I knew this pastor and the pastor's wife, who wasn't even in the church that we were going to. But they were so kind that every time we would go there, they would give us food. But the interesting thing was that this food was always super spicy. Like,
that made your nose run. And,
exactly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm hungry, So my sister and I would go there each and every day just for the food, and they would pray with us and do all of those different, but we were there for the food. But every time, Madlamin, that's one of her names. I'm grateful to those people. Like, you have no idea what you planted in my life, in that point, and how you just showed up when I truly needed you. I think people like that are just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So you finished school. You're heading towards studies. Tell us a bit about that journey.
So now, my grandmother is only receiving a social grant. And so I'm now finished with my studies. While I was still doing grade 12, in fact, there was a former student from our school who came back and who chatted with us that, hey, don't worry, after grade 12, you can go to college, even though that your parents or your parents are unemployed, or your grandmother is the only one that is in your life. So you can go into that space. I was like, really? And she talked about different bursaries, and she talked about NSFAS that was available. And I became interested. No, I wasn't really. I was interested in NSFAS because I thought to myself, at the time, I wanted to be a reporter.
Okay.
And it was really based on the fact that I felt I had good command over the languages like Xhosa and English. So I was inspired by the people that I was seeing on national television. So I thought, I could do that.
Yeah.
So that's how I made my choice in terms of career that I should go. It's like, I can do that. So
how many of us thought that way, though, hey?
Exactly. So I applied at Rhodes University, which is very close to where I live. And my teacher sat me down also and asked me to apply at Vaaltein University. And like, in terms of picking these universities, it was in terms of the pictures I saw. Like, that looks kind of nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go there. But in any case, because there was nobody that really was there to coach me, there was no model. There was nobody at that time who had ever gone to university.
Wow.
My cousin brother, whom I told you about earlier on, went to Border Technikon, which is more of a college. And so I was now going into university, or at least at the time I didn't know I was gonna go. But in any case, I had applied to universities and only universities. So I applied. So my teacher asked me to apply at Vaaltein as well because they had a social work program. And I was like, oh man, social work. When I came back from home to live with my grandmother took me to a social worker locally. And, the experience that I had wasn't a very positive one. So now when I was sitting down with my teacher and she's like, go and do that, I was like, no, that's not me. can't be doing that to people.
Yeah.
And then she said, I told her about my experience. And then she said, Sive, this may have been something that you experienced. But you can go into that space. You can change things. And you can give other people who are in your situation or who are even in dire situations a different kind of hope and a different kind of change. So I was like, okay, I'll apply. But I think I still had it in my heart that I would rather go to Rhodes and do the journalism degree.
Yeah.
So then the following year came, but there was issues in my application at Rhodes. I think they asked me to send results before the time the results were out, and then I didn't communicate back to let them know what the situation was.
Yeah.
And so by the time I went to them, when I had my results, they told me, no, Sive, we can't take you now because the program is full. And I was just shattered. You know, I became desperate in that moment. What am I going to do? Like, all I knew was going to school and, what am I going to do now? Yeah. So I became desperate, but I remembered that there was that other application that I had done at Forte. So I thought, okay, let me go and check in on that. So I went there. And, one of the things that I was told in that speech by that former student that came to talk to us when we were doing grade 12 was that if you apply for the social work degree, you automatically get a scholarship. Because the Department of Social Development was involved in that program that. Yeah. There was that partnership. So when I went there, University of Fort Hare accepted me. I'm really excited. I was like, I'm going to school. But now the problem was that I didn't apply for the scholarship. And now they also explained at the university that no, it doesn't work like that. You actually have to make a separate application for the scholarship. So now I thought that I had a breakthrough. And then there I was now back to square one because I knew for a fact that my grandmother wasn't going to qualify for any edu loans. And there was no one else in the family that was going to step up and do that for me. Yeah. So I was really frustrated. And I think in those days I was going to bed crying. Not knowing what to do. But, God put in... There's something interesting about this story as I'm talking about it as well. I'm realizing I didn't know God personally. I didn't have a relationship with God. But for some reason, there were these thoughts that would just be put in my head, go to this person. And I would literally go to the person and they would help me. Because when I was in that space, I went to one of the previous... subject advisors for English and Xhosa that used to come and work in our schools. We didn't have any other relationship except we knew each other in that space. And so I was in King Williamstown and I went to his office and I was outside. It was windy. I was crying. And eventually he came through and he said, hey, what's going on? Come in. I saw your results. You did amazing. I saw some of the subjects that I did well in that I passed with an A. It was Xhosa that I passed with a distinction and life orientation. So they actually reflected in the results as well. So he was telling me about my results. So he was keeping tabs. So then I sat him down. I was like, hey, I've been admitted to university, but now my problem is that, I don't know what I'm going to do because the scholarship and everything has already been closed. So I don't know what to do. So he helped me navigate that to such an extent that I ended up having a scholarship and I ended up going to the University of Fort Hare. And, I was there for 2 years. And then from there on, I decided, you know what, because that was the Alice campus, the main campus. And then from there on, I transferred to East London campus because I was just tired of being in a rural community.
You wanted some city life.
Something different, something challenging,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I transferred there and then in 1.5 years, there was this program that they told us about that you could do an exchange program and go to do your internship as well as your research project at Minnesota State University, which is in the United States. So I applied. I applied and, I got selected. It's like, yes, I'm going to the States. But the challenge, I don't know, with these stories of mine, there's always a little twist because then they told us that if you want to go, you have to raise the money. So it's like, you got it, but you might not go kind of thing. But, I found a way to raise that money because I converted my scholarship And I went to speak to the dean, and I said, this is the opportunity that I've got. And if you guys don't charge me for tuition fees, because, you know, this is a relationship that we're trying to build between these two schools. So if you don't charge me for tuition fees, then my scholarship can go in towards this. And I was able to get that opportunity. Okay. And I met amazing people who, when we got there, also helped us raise more money so that we could stay the 6 months that we were there. It was myself and Mr. Monde Solomon, who's one of my good friends now.
Wow.
He's back in the United States. They're living there full time, was studying for 2 years, and now he's just living there now.
Wow.
Yeah. So then after that, I did that there, came back home. The challenge though is that coming back home, I did my internship and everything that side. So when I came back home, nobody knew me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And when I was in school, I was more into my studies. I didn't really network and, you know, get to know people who knew certain people or who were connected to employment opportunities. So that was the biggest mistake that, you know, I kicked myself for. And I was thinking when I came back to South Africa, the contract with the Department of Social Development that I had signed when I got their scholarship was that I would come back and I would work for them. So I had to come back from the States as well and come back to plow back and also to oblige to the contract because I didn't want to breach the contract. But unfortunately, I couldn't find employment.
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult time in my life. I thought that my childhood was difficult, but try working hard your whole life to get what you thought would get you to your success or to your big break. Yeah. And then when you graduate, that's when you learn that, in fact, this piece of paper that you've got right now is not a guarantee that you're going to get a job or that your life is going to be set. Yeah. So that for me was... it was a huge wake-up call, but it also pushed me into a deep depression because now I came back and I was living by myself. I had to rent a place. I couldn't afford to go back home when I couldn't find a job. I couldn't afford to go back home into the village because then that would exclude me to more opportunities. So I had to stay in the city in East London, find a job. Well, I had piece jobs because that's what I was able to find. Find piece jobs, make sure that I rented and ate. So it was a difficult time in my life that my friend ended up moving with me just so we can, you know, rent together, eat together. And, you know, she was somebody that was vibrant, always wanting to go out and do certain things. But for me, I was, like I was saying, I was depressed. So it was me going to the gym and then coming back. And I didn't want to go around doing people. I felt there was no need for me to celebrate or meet new people because I don't have a job. It's like, it's this thing, weighing in on your shoulders, trying to figure out how do I move from here to the next level. And I did this for about a period of 4 years. So within this period of not being able to find a long-term job, I decided to get... I decided to do my master's degree in social work to kill some time. So then I did that within that. So for 4 years, I wasn't finding employment, but I did complete my master's degree in social work. And then after that, I think 1 year I was like, no, this is it. I am done. The city it's got nothing else for me. I'm leaving. And then I decided that I'm either going to go to Johannesburg or Cape Town. Now, this is the interesting part. I don't know anyone in those two places. The only person that I knew of was my stepsister who lived here, but I didn't have a relationship with her. And I think there was a conflict in the way we viewed the way we were both raised, because she was also raised by my dad. And so she felt that the way my dad did things was appropriate. And she didn't understand our decision to move to the other side and why we were making my dad a villain, basically. So so I remember when I once came on a holiday to her, she would do the same things that my dad did to us within that 3 weeks period we were here on a holiday. she would do the same things that my dad did to us to prove a point that my dad wasn't abusing us. My dad was disciplining us.
Wow.
And you know what she would do is she'd beat you up, and then she would sit you down and ask you, why am I doing this? And you would have to say, because you love me.
Yeah, how twisted, hey?
It is, eh? But it's what I'm saying. She experienced the same thing. Sometimes we just get so used to trauma, or that we think it's normal, or because it's happened all our lives, we think it's normal. And I think I could understand, again, I can understand her situation. That's what she knows. And so that's what she's passing on.
Yeah.
So I think that's another cycle that we need to find a way to break as well. Okay. But in any case, that's the only other person I knew. And so I was like, I'm making this decision. I'm now at this point in my life, and I have to take this risk. I need to call her and say, I need your help. So I called her. I was like, hey, can I stay with you for just 1 month? I need a job. You know, I've got a social work degree more, so I'm just going to come through. I'm going to find a job. Meanwhile, I couldn't find a job in the Eastern Cape for 4 years. But I believe...
Yeah, 1 month I'll find a job in Cape Town.
You know, in the city, I don't even know. I know nobody. Yeah. But in any case, I came through. And I think God directed my steps. But before I came through, we had an appreciation party in December that last year that I was in the Eastern Cape. We had an appreciation party for my grandmother for all that she had done to raise all of us. And so my brother, who's saved, was preaching. I have a very interesting family. Half of the family is saved. Half of the family is just not saved, and they're doing their own thing.
Interesting.
You know, but for some reason, somehow we coexist. So now, this time around, my uncles who had given up in life and now were drinking, and they're just in the village, they're not doing anything. They are incredibly intelligent people that I know, but they're not doing anything with their lives. So then my brother is preaching, and everybody is here. It was a family affair. So everybody's here. My brother's preaching, and this guy takes this opportunity to analyze each and every one of us. And he kind of woke me up, because he was telling me the stories of all these different people. And he told me, in fact, that's how I interpreted his preaching that day, that you are no different from these people. If you don't find your way to the Lord and make him the center of your life, you will also end up where they are. So that's what woke me up, and I just got up. I was like, okay, it's time for me to give my life to the Lord.
Wow.
So I came and we prayed, and then I left. I went to live with my friend, I think for about a month, and then I decided to come down to Cape Town. And then that's where I actually saw God really just directing my steps. Within 3 weeks' time, I got a job at Living Hope.
Wow.
And then from there on, Living Hope has these devotions that they do every day. And I really feel like I have grown spiritually through those, because each and every day I heard a word, you know, and I thought about the things that I was hearing, and I would read more sometimes about some of the things that I felt were interesting and that I felt spoke to my situation. Yeah. And so I worked at Living Hope as a palliative care social worker for 2 years. But I was always the kind of social worker that was interested not just in what was happening at Living Hope Healthcare Center. I was also interested in other things that were happening, in other programs that were happening, because Living Hope is just amazing. Like, we've got something for everybody. So many different programs that we have there. So I would also try and get involved in different activities that they're doing. And so after 2 years, I was then able to get the current position that I am in now. So I started about a month ago as a family strengthening manager. So it's been quite interesting.
Wow.
It's been quite interesting. Okay. I don't want to put you to sleep.
No.
I've been talking for a while.
Such an interesting story. But tell me, you know, salvation for you didn't happen at an earlier age. It happened like more recently. Yeah. Which has its own excitement, because you don't come with all of the, oh, this is what I learned from my family, or I got taken to church, which is great, but I think sometimes as well, when you find God for yourself at an age where you can fully comprehend that, you're fully choosing that. You know, you're making this mindful, cerebral decision to follow Christ. And so, I mean, if I had to ask you this, just a out there question, Who is God to you?
Wow. Wow.
Now that you've found him, and you've made the decision.
Yeah, that's always, let me just go back a little bit. My grandmother used to force me to go to church.
Okay. So
my grandmother used to force me to go to
yeah.
church every day. But our church was a church of 10 people.
Okay.
And there was always the same pastor that was preaching, and it was an old man whom I didn't relate to at all. And so I would sometimes slip out of church.
Yeah.
My grandmother would go and find me, bring me back. So that was my situation when I was still growing up. But then as an adult and as somebody that has gone through so many different struggles, and, finding myself in a hopeless situation, because I think when you thought that education was the key, was this is it, this is success, then eventually you realize, actually, this is kind of empty in a way. And I don't mean to say education is meaningless. It's got its values, but anything that we do that is outside of God, it becomes meaningless at some point. There's some emptiness that it comes with. So I feel that God is the center of my life. That's where I connect to. So when I lose my way, and I always do, that's where I go back and I connect to. And He's something that just grounds me. Yeah, I don't know how to say it.
No.
But honestly, the reason, it's a purpose. God gives me purpose. So when I just feel like I'm lost, I just kind of go back to Him, and He gives me purpose. And I think, when I look back to my life experiences, even though that I didn't know God myself, He was always there. He was always directing my steps. And, for that, I'm grateful. And I think that maybe that was happening because of the prayers from some of the women that were in my life, my grandmothers and some of the, my cousin brothers who were saved, who knew our situation, but kept on praying that somehow we would also find our way to God. So, I'm grateful.
That's
I'm grateful
wonderful,
to have a
such a good
relationship
answer.
now with
so
God
good.
myself. Yeah.
I love that we can strive for, we can believe the lie that no, it's education.
Yeah.
No, it's earning top dollar in this job.
Absolutely.
Then I'm good. And I think we go through our lives grasping through, then it's going to be marriage. Then it might be kids. Then it might be retirement.
Yep.
And through it all, if we don't have Christ, we're never anchored.
No.
We never have that purpose.
No. And the things you accomplish, they're just never enough.
Yeah.
I think I've heard a lot of people saying that, especially about money. Money isn't everything.
No.
And I'd be like, give me the money.
Yeah. That's fun for you to say.
Exactly.
I wouldn't ask Khan.
But with all the things that we accomplish, I see it in some of the things, because immediately when I accomplish something, I'm always already thinking about the next thing. Okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And then I realize, actually, these things are quite empty.
Yeah.
And one thing that is more fulfilling and more purposeful and more grounding that, you can rest on is really God.
Have you found purpose and a sense of calling in your current role at Living Hope in terms of, how you walk with the Lord and how God has really placed this particular family-based ministry at Living Hope on your heart?
Yeah, I do. I think my experiences as a child, my experiences with my families, have kind of driven me to where I am right now, because I work with people, with families that are struggling somehow. There's a need somehow. And so I feel like that change, that hope that my teacher and I were speaking about while I was still at school, I feel like I am now coming into that gap. And through the work that we're doing at Living Hope with the different social auxiliary workers that have just put their hearts out there, that for me is just, It's just been amazing. So I do feel that God has called me to do this.
Yeah.
And my story and my struggles has really played the biggest role in helping me understand the people that come to the doors of Living Hope. And the way in which I treat those people as well has been informed a lot by some of my own experiences, my own personal experiences.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to forget, Tristan. It's very easy to, get into the, habit and the business of things, and then some, and you forget that actually the reason why I'm busy here with this administration is because of the person. I'm here because of this person.
Yeah.
So I need to always give them attention, and treat them with integrity and understand, sit down, understand, make the time for them. So that is something that means everything to me. Let me share with you a story of a young man that came to see me. I don't know why I'm saying young man. He's my age.
You're still young.
I don't know why I said that, but in any case, so this guy, I know him. I've got this thing of knowing people, but I don't know them. But I see, if I'm walking the same road that you are walking in every day, and I see you every day, somewhere in my heart, I think I know you. So if we suddenly meet maybe at the mall or at the shop or at an event, the conversation for me will start from, I won't ask your name. So it will just be, because we know each other, we see each other every day, like, oh, how is work going? And those kinds of things. And we just go deep into it. So there's this guy, I had been seeing him apparently at Forte, because he was at Forte as well. Right. But we never had a conversation. Yeah. And then someday last year in January, we met at the mall, Long Beach Mall. We had a conversation quickly. He was working for McDonald's at the time. Okay. And then he comes to our Living Hope ministry, and this time around he was hungry. And apparently he had the same situation that I experienced. He graduated and then became unemployed. And I think this is a serious problem that we are experiencing in our country, especially in the Eastern Cape. It's just, it's not right.
It's rough at the moment.
Yeah. There's just something, I think there's something wrong with the education system. Yeah. There's something we're missing, guys. Yeah. We need to figure out a way to fix this, because there's no way that we could be producing so many people that are becoming unemployed. That there's something that we're missing there. Yeah. But in any case, this guy comes through, and, he still got pride. And somebody was addressing or assisting him. And so it's one of the people that is not trained as a social worker, but they have specific services under their program that can help people. So if a person is saying they're hungry, then they'll connect with somebody that with either a soup kitchen or with a food parcel, that kind of thing. But now she was experiencing difficulties with this guy. And then I heard them while they were talking. So I came back and I went and I stood there, asked his name. He told me his name. And then I was like, so I explained who this person was and what they were trying to do. And he just kept on saying, this person is not hearing me. So I was like, okay, let's go have a sit down. Let's talk. Then I realized that it wasn't food only that this guy was hungry for. He wanted to be heard. He wanted to tell his story to somebody. Yeah. And that somebody was somebody who understood that story, because I was also in that same situation. Yeah. But the most difficult thing for him was that he's a man. So it's difficult to go to your friend and say, I'm hungry, or to go to, a soup kitchen for that matter to get food. So it was a very difficult situation for him. So we sat and we talked about so many different things that he was going through. And he left, and everybody had already left, by the way. So I couldn't connect him with food in that very moment. Yeah. But he left with so much hope that when I called him back the following day, he was so excited. And he kept on saying to me, God bless you, my sister. God bless you, my sister. And I was thinking to myself, and I would reflect back what he was saying to me, that I'm hoping that God's blessing on your life is also going to happen, so that you have your breakthrough. Yeah. And then he said, no, don't twist my words, Sive. God is saying something to me right now about you because you've done something in my life that I don't understand because I haven't gotten him a job. No, I haven't. But what I did was I sat down with him, I heard him, and I helped restore hope, which is something that I think he needed more than anything.
That's
Because,
big.
you know, you can have a piece of paper that say you are this, but if you've lost hope and you've lost your sense of purpose, then what's the point? What's the point?
And it's this love for people that God has given you and God gives us.
Yeah.
When we can look past our needs and actually understand why they are behaving or acting out how they are.
Yeah.
Because so often we just judge the behavior.
It's true.
And we don't look at the heart
It's
and
true.
What does this person actually need? And just to listen to people as well is so important.
Yeah.
eh?
Yeah. No, it is. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
You know, you feel invisible sometimes when you feel like, because I don't know what happens with us as humans. We have this tendency of over-identifying ourselves by the profession. Tristan, the pastor, you know? And then Sive, the social worker, you know. And then when that thing that you're supposed to be is not really working out, then it's like you feel less of a human being. And then that's where we hit depression or we hit rock bottoms. And then sometimes we feel like we don't matter. We start trying to take our lives, or we start behaving in ways that are inappropriate, or we tend to substance abuse, or all these different things that are not helpful. But I think what's important is we need to remember who we are outside of these different labels.
That's it.
Because that's not who we are.
You
know? And I think that's where God also comes in. You know, when you look at yourself and you relate to yourself as simply the child of God or the servant of the Lord, who God uses in whatever way he so chooses, that fulfills his purpose and your or his purpose for your life. And it's just an incredible.
You know, I'm so reminded of the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son, where, you know, he goes out, squanders his wealth, his inheritance, tries to find meaning, and is literally just on the curbside, like eating with the pigs. And yet, when he manages to pull himself back to the father, his identity is restored as a son. And he remembers who he is because of the Father's embrace. And I think as Christians, that's what we're called to do through our ministry, through whatever we do. And I think you've got an awesome responsibility and role in doing that, in helping people know that they matter and that they have an identity and that they are loved. That's so important. Sive, our time is coming to an end. And maybe we've got to think about a part 2 at some point.
Absolutely.
Where we can talk more about just your role at Living Hope and the various challenges and how we as a church and community can maybe get a bit more involved there. So maybe we need to do a part 2.
I'd love that.
But based on where you are today, you know, one question that I always like to ask as an ender is what advice would you give to those listening? I'm thinking particularly to those who are maybe a bit younger, who are either in school or going through the whole study varsity process, or even just battling with unemployment, etc. If there's one bit of advice from your life, what would you want to say to those listening?
Wow. Well, okay, number one, there's no guarantees, you guys. I think that's number one. When you go into the space that you're going to go into, give it your heart, give it your all. But please know there's no guarantees that things are going to work out the way that you are planning. Another thing that I want to say is align your plans with God's plans. Because when you have your own plan, there's a high likelihood that it's not going to work out the way that you hope it will. But if it's aligned with God's plan, then you know it's your purpose. You know what I mean?
That's so good.
And so because it is your purpose, God will find a way to open the right doors for you to go into that direction. Sometimes, unfortunately, we find ourselves in those spaces that, you know, that God doesn't desire for us to be in. It's okay. Find your way to God. Always find your way to God. And I think most importantly, in whatever you're doing, always remember you matter You
Yeah.
matter, you matter, you matter,
Yeah.
you matter. Because we forget this. There's lots of peer pressures around us. There's lots of things that we're exposed to that make us, or they diminish who we are or what we think we are. But please, whatever's going on, whatever you're going through, always know you matter. There's so much that a lot of people that are around you, where you are, where you're working, where you're studying, they would miss without you. So you matter. That's all I want to say.
That's so good. What a great way to end.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I think when we choose to be vulnerable, people can relate to that. That's what you've done. So I just honor you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tristan.
We'll chat again.
Sounds good. Part 2.
Here you go.
Cool.
Well, such a good reminder of God's faithfulness in our life. And I think just through Sive's vulnerability and her honesty about brokenness in her past and how she fought and moved past that, really just trust that this would encourage you today as you just journey on your life and just keep on working out what it is that you're called to and where you're called to do it. So thanks for listening or watching. As always, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Cheers for now.